Hello and welcome everybody to another puzzle challenge video with chessuniversity.com. This is Ryan Murphy presenting today's challenge, and we're going to start like we always do now with the solution to yesterday's puzzle, where in this position it is black to play and win. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it and try to solve it, pause the video now because I'm going to reveal the solution and then we'll continue with the new puzzle for the day. Okay. So in this position, white's last move was queen to e3, dodging a trade of queens. It was this position, and white played queen e3. And now the move bishop takes g5 is winning on the spot, because either white will capture on g5 or on e5, and in both scenarios they lose material. So if queen takes here, then simply black will take on d2 and be up a piece. So that's pretty clear. Instead, if queen takes on g5, there's this nice move, knight f3, using the fact that the queen is pinning the g pawn to the white king, and the knight is delivering a fork, attacking the king and the queen. So now, after the king moves to the corner, the queen can be taken, black is up a lot of material. So that's the solution to yesterday's puzzle. Let's now move on to the new one for today. Okay, so here's our position. This actually comes from analysis of an opening, sort of opening gone wrong for white. And in this position, it's black to play and win. There's a direct winning line, so please try to find the best move here. There's a couple of moves that are good for black, but one is winning, the other is like ending the game, and then the rest are just really bad for black. So the margin of error is kind of low here. So as I usually do, I'll rewind to the beginning to show how we reached this kind of crazy position. And today's a good chance to just learn a little bit about a somewhat common opening. So this is the two knights defense by black, and knight g5, which is pretty common at lower levels of chess, and also it's been played a lot by grandmasters, but the point is simply to try to take this pawn. And black really only has one good method of defending against this, which is the move d5 to block the bishop, ed5, and now the best move by far, though there are lots of tricky lines here for black as well, is knight to a5. Moves like b5 and knight d4 are interesting, but white's supposed to be better against them, though they're very tricky. Yeah, and some people at home might be asking why not knight takes pawn, and there's actually two very good reasons why this move is not good. One is a very practical, dangerous line that goes knight takes f7, king takes f7, queen f3, king e6, knight c3, and white just plays in the long run against the king in the center, which is pinned by the bishop. It's very difficult to play this position for black, even though as a computer it might be defensible. So that's one reason. The other reason, which is probably equally scary, is d4. And the simple threat here is, because now that the knight is defended, of course, by the bishop, white wants to open up the attack against the knight on d5, and the knight really can't move because it's pinned to f7. And if black takes this pawn, like knight takes d4, then after c3, the knight cannot move because the knight on d5 would be hanging. So black has to flick in the move b5 to counterattack the bishop. And now after the bishop moves, say bishop to d5, now this knight will move back. And after either bishop takes b5 or a queen move like queen f3, white has a crushing position. There's other things that black can play here, but they're all pretty bad. So let's rewind a little bit more. So yeah, here, after knight takes d4, c3 is good for white, and if pawn takes, white simply castles, puts the rook on e1. In the near future, it has an irresistible attack. So this is known to be pretty bad for black. So knight a5 is the best chance. You don't have to take my word for it, you can check it yourself. d3, h6. By the way, d3 is not the best move for white. This is the line I want to analyze today. It's a move you might face if you're playing online. People who don't know what the main line is here for white. White's supposed to give a check on b5, and then after the pawn blocks, they're supposed to take. And then there's a couple of different options. There's a tricky line with queen f3, and also the bishop can just drop back. d3 is, I think, the current consensus in terms of the best square to retreat to, but e2 is also possible, so is f1, but f1's a bit passive. Um, but anyway, that's how white should play here, but d3 is a pretty common way to try to avoid a lot of the more complicated lines, though it's still good for black if black knows what they're doing, which is what we're looking at right now. So, rule of thumb in this opening as black is you want to chase this knight back and push it back as far as possible, and also to develop your dark square bishop actively, and then just try to get a lead in development and keep the pieces active. So starting with h6 is very common. Now e4, nice move, taking advantage of the pawn being overworked. So queen e2, defending by pinning, and now it takes, and bishop c5 is how black should play. And what we're looking at today is what happens if white castles in this position, which is probably one of the more natural looking moves. The best line, which I'll just briefly show, is to immediately retreat the knight and then bring it to b3 to kick the bishop away. But still, this position is pretty good for black because they're going to open the center with c6. White's queen is really awkward on f1, and the king is also pretty dangerously left in the center here. So after castles, black is also going to castle, now threatening to take the knight with the pawn. So now the knight has to move. It really only has the d2 square. I should point out that knight h4 probably runs into g5, among other moves like knight g4, which would be a discovered attack on the knight. So knight h4 is not recommended. Knight e1 is awkward because after bishop g4, the queen has to go to d2 because all other squares are defended. And then after a move like knight h5, knight c3, f5, black is intending to attack on the king side with queen h4 and possibly bishop to d6. And the only other move is knight e5, which runs into the problem of bishop d4 when the knight is basically trapped. The only way you can defend it is by playing a move such as bishop to f4, but that leaves the b2 pawn hanging, and I'm sure there are other problems as well. So knight f to d2 is the best square for the knight. Now bishop g4 hitting the queen. Queen has to go to e1. Queen to d7. This is a nice move, connecting the rooks. It does leave this pawn, quote unquote loose, but black has a checkmating idea on the cards, so not too concerned about the pawn. And if white takes this pawn, by the way, something like this, and now rook f or rook a to e8, either one is pretty strong. This queen's going to continue to get chased. Let's say here, here. Something like this is already really good for black. The highlighting factor is the lack of development for white and black's bishop pair. And of course this tactic works because the back rank is very weak for white, and if they take on e8 it doesn't really help them. They still can't take this bishop because of rook e8, or rook e1 check rather. So yeah, this just kind of collapses for white. So going back, knight b3 is what should be played, or it's one of the better ideas to try to push this bishop off of c5, though to be fair, there's really not a good move here for white. White's already in a lot of trouble. And here's a good moment to pause the video if you're interested. There's a really sweet move here for black, which the computers don't initially spot, but if you give them a few seconds, they will eventually find it. So pause your video and find a nice attacking idea to start a kingside attack for black. Okay, yeah, the cool move in question is bishop to f3. And the point is, it clears the way for queen g4. It's really hoping that white takes so that the king gets opened up, and black can bring the queen in and try to checkmate. And the idea is just to go queen g4 and try to go queen takes g2 checkmate. That's the main plan here. And g2 is the focal point for the attack. So first thing to check is what happens if they take. This is simply going to be a mate. They can try to run away from it, but it's not going to really help. Rook g1 to protect mate, and simply bring the bishop, and yeah, there's not much they can do here. Rook g4 you take, queen g1, white's trying to be insistent, giving pieces away to not get mated in this position, but yeah, it's not enough. Here there's probably two different ways you can go about it, maybe more. I mean, I'm even tempted by playing this idea, but I think knight g4 should get the job done. Fg3, f2, and yeah, threatening f1, threatening to take the queen. Everything should mate here. So taking the bishop's kind of crazy. That shouldn't be done. Instead, bishop f4 is a relatively good try. Another good try is h3 to cover the g4 square. Then the queen is going to get in along this route. It's going to come to the g file by means of g6. So Bishop f4 is a better try, trying to block on g3, like this. And then after knight h5, knight takes c5. Knight h5, the way, deserves definitely an exclamation point, because it sacrifices a piece to try to pursue the attack. And after knight c5, knight f4, and this is actually a very nice pattern to remember. If you have like this sort of light square attack, these pieces in this configuration are very strong. Let's say knight d2, trying to get rid of the bishop. It is now black to play and win. So hopefully you guys can see it. Comment if you see the solution, and I will be posting another video tomorrow. So thanks for watching.